The book of Judges tells of a turbulent time in ancient Israel. This period, marked by chaos and instability, saw the Israelites struggling to maintain their faith and unity. Without a central authority, the tribes often found themselves in disarray, each doing what was right in their own eyes. There was no king, and the people often turned away from God. They worshipped idols and adopted the customs of the surrounding nations, leading to moral and social decay. The absence of strong leadership left a vacuum that was filled by judges who were more like tribal leaders or military chieftains than judicial figures. Tribes fought amongst themselves and violence was common. The land was rife with conflict as neighboring tribes and foreign invaders took advantage of Israel's disunity. The judges rose to deliver the people from their oppressors, but their victories were often short-lived and peace was fleeting. It is in this setting that we encounter the tragic story of the Levite and his concubine. This narrative, found in the latter chapters of Judges, serves as a grim illustration of the moral decline and lawlessness that plagued Israel during this era. The Levite, whose name we never learn, lived in the mountains of Ephraim. These mountains, rugged and remote, were home to many who sought solitude or refuge from the turmoil below. The Levite's life, however, was far from peaceful. He had a concubine, a woman who was like a wife, but with fewer rights. Concubinage was a common practice in ancient times, often involving women of lower social status who were taken into a household for companionship and bearing children. Despite her secondary status, the concubine's departure would set off a chain of events that revealed the darker side of human nature. She had left him and returned to her father's house in Bethlehem. The reasons for her departure are not detailed, but it is clear that her return to her father's home was a significant breach of social norms and expectations. The Levite, wanting her to return, traveled to Bethlehem to bring her back. His journey was not just a physical one, but also a quest to restore his honor and household. The road to Bethlehem was long and fraught with potential dangers, but the Levite was determined. After spending several days with his concubine's family, the Levite prepared to return home. The hospitality he received was customary, reflecting the cultural importance of welcoming guests and ensuring their comfort. However, this delay would prove costly. It was late in the day when they set out, accompanied by a servant and a pair of donkeys. Traveling at dusk was risky, as the roads were perilous and bandits often lurked in the shadows. Yet, the Levite pressed on, perhaps underestimating the dangers that lay ahead. As the sun began to set, they found themselves nearing Gibeah, a city of the Jebusites. The Jebusites were one of the many Canaanite tribes that inhabited the land, and their city was known for its fortified walls and strategic location. Fearful of staying in a non-Israelite city, the Levite decided to press on to Gibeah, a city belonging to the tribe of Benjamin. The decision to avoid Gibeah was driven by a desire for safety and familiarity, but it would lead them into even greater peril. Little did he know, this decision would lead them into the heart of a nightmare. The events that followed would expose the depths of human cruelty and the consequences of a society without justice or compassion. Arriving at Gibeah, the Levite and his companions found no one willing to offer them lodging. They waited in the city's square as darkness fell, feeling increasingly vulnerable and alone. Finally, an old man, also from the land of Ephraim, saw them and took pity on their plight. He invited them to his home, offering them food, shelter, and a place to rest for the night. As they settled into the old man's home, a group of wicked men from the city surrounded the house. They began to bang on the door, demanding that the old man bring out the Levite so they could know him, a euphemism for sexual assault. Terrified, the old man pleaded with the mob, offering them his own virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine instead. In a shocking act of cowardice, the Levite agreed, pushing his concubine out the door and into the hands of the depraved men. Throughout the night, the men of Gibeah abused the Levite's concubine. She endured unimaginable horrors, until finally, as dawn approached, they left her lying in the street, broken and lifeless. The Levite, emerging from the old man's house, found his concubine collapsed on the doorstep. She was barely alive. He lifted her onto his donkey, and they began the grim journey back to his home. Upon arriving, overwhelmed with rage and grief, he took a sword and dismembered her body into 12 pieces. He then sent these pieces to each of the 12 tribes of Israel, a shocking message meant to convey the brutality of the crime and a demand for justice. The horrific act committed against the Levite's concubine sent shockwaves through the 12 tribes of Israel. They gathered together, united in their outrage and determined to see justice served. The elders of Israel demanded that the tribe of Benjamin hand over the men responsible for the atrocity. The Benjamites, however, refused to surrender their own, even in the face of such a monstrous crime. They gathered their forces, prepared to defend their kinsmen and their honor, even if it meant war against their fellow Israelites. The ensuing war between the tribes of Israel and the tribe of Benjamin was brutal and bloody. The conflict erupted from a deep-seated grievance, a crime that had shaken the very foundations of their society. The Israelites, driven by a sense of justice and a desire to purge the evil from among them, gathered their forces and prepared for a confrontation that would test their resolve and unity. The Israelites, fueled by righteous anger and superior numbers, fought with a ferocity that initially overwhelmed the Benjamites. Their battle cries echoed through the valleys, a testament to their unwavering determination. Each clash of swords and shields was a reminder of the stakes at hand, the future of their people hanging in the balance. However, the Benjamites, skilled warriors defending their homeland, fought back with equal fervor. They were not just fighting for survival, they were defending their honor, their way of life. Every inch of ground was contested fiercely, with neither side willing to yield. The Benjamites' intimate knowledge of the terrain gave them a slight edge, allowing them to mount effective counterattacks. The war raged for days, each battle claiming countless lives. The fields were strewn with the fallen, a grim reminder of the cost of this internecine conflict. The cries of the wounded and the dying filled the air, mingling with the sounds of clashing weapons and the roar of battle. It was a scene of utter devastation, a testament to the ferocity of the combatants. The tide turned back and forth, victory seeming to elude both sides. One moment, the Israelites would gain the upper hand, pushing the Benjamites back with sheer force of numbers. The next, the Benjamites would rally, their fierce resistance driving the Israelites into retreat. It was a war of attrition, with neither side able to secure a decisive victory. As the conflict dragged on, it became clear that this was no ordinary war. It was a fight for the soul of Israel, a test of the very bonds that held the 12 tribes together. The cultural and spiritual implications of the war weighed heavily on the combatants, each side believing that their cause was just and righteous. The unity of the nation was at stake, and the outcome would shape the future of Israel for generations to come. Finally, through a combination of strategy and divine intervention, the Israelites gained the upper hand. They devised a plan to lure the Benjamites into a trap, using their superior numbers to encircle and overwhelm them. The turning point came when the Israelites, guided by a sense of divine purpose, executed their strategy flawlessly, catching the Benjamites off guard and breaking their lines. They pushed the Benjamites back to their stronghold, the city of Gibeah, and unleashed a final, devastating assault. The siege of Gibeah was relentless, with the Israelites determined to bring the conflict to a decisive end. They breached the city's defenses, their fury and determination driving them forward. The streets of Gibeah became a battleground, with the Benjamites making a desperate last stand. Gibeah fell, and the Israelites, in their fury, slaughtered nearly every man, woman, and child in the city. The once proud city was reduced to ruins, its streets running red with blood. The aftermath of the battle was a scene of utter desolation, with the survivors left to mourn their dead and contemplate the cost of their victory. The tribe of Benjamin, once a proud and powerful force, was all but extinguished. Their warriors lay defeated, their cities in ruins. The remnants of the tribe were scattered, their future uncertain. The cost of the conflict was immense, with the very fabric of the nation left in tatters. Only 600 men, who had hidden in a cave during the final battle, remained of their entire tribe. These survivors, haunted by the memories of the conflict and the loss of their kin, faced an uncertain future. They were the last vestiges of a once great tribe, their survival a testament to their resilience and determination. The war had ended, but the scars it left behind would endure for generations. Victory against Benjamin was a hollow one. The battlefield, once a place of fierce combat, now lay silent, echoing the cries of the fallen. The ruins of the ancient city stood as a testament to the devastation that had occurred. The soldiers, weary and broken, wandered through the desolation, haunted by the memories of the conflict. The Israelites had achieved justice for the Levite's concubine, but at a terrible cost. The land was filled with mourning, as families grieved for their lost loved ones. The desolate landscape, littered with bodies, was a grim reminder of the price they had paid. The aftermath of the ancient city was a scene of sorrow and regret. The near annihilation of one of their own tribes left a gaping wound in the fabric of Israel. The tribe of Benjamin, once a proud and integral part of the nation, was now on the brink of extinction. The ruins of their cities and the somber assemblies of the remaining tribes reflected the deep sense of loss and despair that permeated the land. The remaining tribes were now faced with a new dilemma: how to ensure the survival of Benjamin, a tribe they had sworn never to give their daughters to in marriage. The council of elders, dressed in ancient attire, gathered to debate the issue. The worried group of men discussed various options, but the oath they had taken weighed heavily on their minds. Bound by their oath, yet desperate to prevent the complete extinction of Benjamin, the Israelites resorted to a drastic measure. They knew that breaking their vow would bring dishonor, but allowing an entire tribe to vanish was unthinkable. In a solemn gathering, they planned their next move with determination and a heavy heart. They attacked the city of Gilead, a city that had refused to join them in the war against Benjamin. The assault was swift and brutal, as soldiers stormed the city with a sense of grim resolve. The battle scenes were chaotic, with the clashing of swords and the cries of the wounded filling the air. They killed every man and married the surviving virgin women to the remaining Benjamite men. The capture of prisoners was a somber affair, as the ancient soldiers led the captives away. The forced marriages were a desperate attempt to ensure the survival of the tribe, but it was a solution fraught with moral and ethical dilemmas. This act, however, provided only 200 wives for the 600 Benjamite men. The small group of women, now bound to their new husbands, faced an uncertain future. The somber gatherings of men and women in ancient attire reflected the gravity of the situation and the challenges that lay ahead. To address the shortage, the Israelites devised another solution. The ancient council, deep in discussion, weighed their options carefully. The planning sessions were intense as they sought a way to balance their oath with the need to preserve the tribe of Benjamin. The group of men plotted their next move with a sense of urgency and determination. They instructed the remaining Benjamites to lie in wait during a festival at Shiloh and abduct women from the dancing maidens. The festival, a time of celebration and joy, was now tinged with an undercurrent of tension. The women, dancing in traditional attire, were unaware of the ambush that awaited them. The historical context of this act added a layer of complexity to the already fraught situation.